next guest is a Canadian fashion designer, reality TV star, and now a successful contemporary artist who is reviving an ancient and impressive art form, the Mosaic. Jason creates an homage to one of the most primitive yet connective mediums in art history. By combining tile, paint, grout, resin, and vintage porcelain, Jason has re-envisioned a 4,000-year-old craft and has spawned masterpieces and has made it his own. A true labor of love, Jason's pieces are created over a 2 to 4 week process, which he navigates on his own accord. Free from assistants or interns, his dedication, curiosity, and sacrifice have culminated in humbleness, the true mark of an artist. The blend of creativity and ethos have procured Jason a place in the Horalee Guggenheim Gallery, where his works are currently displayed alongside famed innovators such as Picasso, Dali, and Warhol. He has also found success as an artist internationally, selling out collections via shows in New York and London. His painstakingly detailed creations depicting various characters, from Marvel heroes to the Tribe, and his latest release titled No Home. But Jason is stepping back into the role of fashion designer with a limited edition capsule collection with the Vancouver-based athletic wear brand RYU. He now shares his time between New York and his hometown of Vancouver, one of which offers unparalleled variety and vibrancy, and the other, a place of natural wonder and beauty, thus creating a perfect balance of influence to draw upon. Ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to bring you Jason Dussault.
Jason, thanks a lot. Thanks for doing this. Can you tell us about your collaboration here this evening?
Well, it's a grouping of a bunch of different collaborations, and how this whole thing sort of started was with Raphael Mazzucco. I was in New York and I went to his place in Montauk, and I've known him for about 5 years, and I respect his work, and I always thought that the mix of his work and my work together would be a beautiful collaboration. And so I sort of put it out into the universe. I never mentioned it to him, but I'm a firm believer in manifesting your own destiny. And so I pictured it and I imagined it. And 5 years later, I was at his house and we were having a few drinks, and he said, "Hey man, I'm gonna be in Vancouver. Why don't we collaborate together?" And I was like, boom, it happened, It was great. And so I had a very short period of time to put it together. I only had 3.5 months. I usually take about a year and a half to 2 years to do a collection. But I did everything I could to bust my ass every single day to get it done, to do this collaboration. The other collaborations involved some other artists in Vancouver that helped me take the photography part. My part is more of the ceramic, so I needed photographers to sort of take care of the raft side while he wasn't here, and then he would come in and paint them and work with different spices and resin and carving. And so there were a lot of collaborative artists, including Raphael in this, and of course Pamela letting us use her studio like this.
It's a great space. I could move in here anytime.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable.
I can live here.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just like such a gift to be able to show here, and also to be able to show in a space that doesn't have the restraints that a gallery has. A gallery has a lot of restraints as far as deciding, what you put up, how late they stay open, how many people come in, what their collectors like, and that sort of issues. And so you don't have to deal with those when you're dealing with a fellow artist, especially Pamela, who has had issues with galleries and had issues in the press with a lot of her work. So, I mean, it's just a beautiful accident.
How would you describe your work?
Tactile is the most important thing for me. It's like having a dimension to it. That's why I like to work in ceramic and painted fabrics and resins, so you have different layers. So when you look at a piece, you're seeing multiple layers. You're seeing the photograph, you're seeing the painting, you're seeing the resin, and you're seeing the ceramic, and so there's depth to it, and people want to touch it. It feels there's something there that is more than just paint on a canvas. Not taking anything away from paint on a canvas, there's magic that can happen with paint on a canvas, but I can't make that magic with paint on a canvas. I just can't. So I know what my limitations are. Where I believe I can bring magic is depth, and really being able to create something with materials rather than paint.
Can you tell us maybe why you do what you do? What inspires you, I guess, or what drives you?
I mean, ever since I was a child, as long back as I can remember, I always wanted to be an artist. That's what I wanted to do. And at a very young age, I was always painting and drawing and copying other artists, and reading comic books and recreating those comic books, and art, I always wanted to do that. And so I tried a lot of different ways through my life on how to break in. I had a fashion line, I had a television show, I was in finance. When I worked in finance, I always took care of like designing the packages. I mean, I was just always leaning there. And finally at 40 years old, I said, you know what? I got a cushion of a couple years of cash in the bank. I can take care of my family, and I can take 2 years to do what I want to do. And I said, I'm just going to do art. And I threw myself into it. And so far, I've been able to survive on making art. And that's my goal, is to be able to make art that people love and be able to survive and look after my family. And ultimately, you know, if the collectors make money on the work, that's great, and I hope that happens. But really, it's about just being able to survive on art that people really enjoy. And I hope I leave a legacy. You know, I mean, I hope people look at it and say that was an important artist because he did that. I mean, I really hope that that happens. But at this moment in time and living in the now, it's about just doing work that people love enough to spend their hard-earned money on, and they sit down and look at it and enjoy it.
Well, you said you always wanted to be an artist since you were a kid. Who put a pencil or a crayon or a paintbrush or any kind of piece of materials in your hand and said, go ahead and do what you do?
I wish I could say it was, well, it started off a bit dark. My father was a horrible alcoholic. And when he would take me on weekends, my mother was strong enough to leave him at a young age, which was great. But I would see him whenever he would be willing to see me, but he was always wasted and drunk. And so I spent a lot of time when I was with him by myself. And I would get a comic book and a pencil and a piece of paper, and I would draw from those comic books and try to recreate those characters. And so I spent a lot of time alone doing that. My mother, on the other hand, was incredible, and my stepfather was incredible, noticing that I had a talent for that. And they put me in a lot of art courses and nurtured it and fostered that process, which was great. But I'd say my first memory of it was a bit of a dark one. It was like, you know, here's a pencil and here's a comic book, I'm gonna go get wasted and pass out. So it was born sort of darkness, but you know, then my mother and my stepfather really, you know, sort of fostered it, saw that I had a passion for it, and I sort of carried on.
Where do you draw your inspiration from? I noticed a lot of like pop culture, comic books, you got movies, you got rock and roll. Why do you do that? Like what?
Well, it's twofold. Yeah, my art definitely expands across all sorts of spectrums, and some of the spectrums are based on collections. This one is based on a collection and an idea where I wrote a 60-page short story that starts off with the end of the world, and then moves on to tribes that don't want to go back to the life that we're currently in of consumerism and wastefulness. Disrespect for each other, disrespect for animals, the environment. All those things, I believe, are leading us to an ultimate end. I think we've sort of passed the line. It's done, right? Like we're now on a disaster course it's over. And so I imagine, and I don't know how that's going to happen, but I imagine a world if that happens in a nuclear event. But there are survivors, and those survivors create these tribes. And the tribe that survives is a tribe that clings to what's real, which is each other and respect for each other, the land and the animals. And so that's really what this story is about. But other collections have been a little bit more fun. You know, when I was in New York, I was inspired by New York, and like I said, I spent a lot of time drawing superheroes when I was younger, so I had a connection. So I love doing superheroes. You know, for me to do like a ceramic, you know, Superman or a ceramic Darth Vader, or you know, that I really get into it because I'm like, oh, I get to recreate one of my heroes from my youth in a way no one else has ever done it. You know, you see a lot of ceramics and mosaics, but you don't see them the way that I've done them. And so the way that I do them, I take a lot of pride in the fact that I get to recreate this. It becomes my baby. So I get to sort of give a gift to that Superman or that Batman. So, you know, people are multi-dimensional and they have all sorts of different sides to them. And sometimes I feel like getting sort of into the more deep, serious stuff, and sometimes I like getting to the playful stuff. You know, the last group show I did a My Little Pony bent over a a beach ball with their ass in the air for the bronies, because I thought bronies were fucking hilarious. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a brony piece because these guys are so creepy.
First of all, bronies are guys that are in love with My Little Pony,
Exactly.
I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
For our viewers that don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I like to have the fun side and I like to have the serious side, so.
You did one piece, I'm a huge Stones fan. You did a Stones Altamont piece.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that?
I love that
moment
piece.
in time.
So I was in New York and I was doing a residency in Montauk at a hotel called Rushmeyer's. And I was doing a collection of surfboards and I was working in their garden, making them outside. And I got a call from my gallery that represents me in New York. And they said, hey, we're doing this Rolling Stones show where we're doing all Rolling Stones inspired work. And we got Ronnie Wood and we got his work. And we've got some really cool pieces. Would you do a piece for it? It's for the opening of the Edition Hotel in New York. So I said, yeah, I'd love to. And one thing about the Stones biography that I think is really great was what happened at Altamont. And I was always very, I've always thought the Hells Angels is very romantic.
Well, look at the Sands of Anarchy. Like that show was huge for a reason, right? People are just fascinated with the outlaw culture, I guess.
That's exactly right. It's outlaws. You think of like Billy the Kid, and you think outlaws or gangster movies, all this sort of thing. They're very interesting because it's something that you necessarily would never do, but there's something very attractive about it. And so I was really attracted to the story that the Stones hired the Hells Angels to be their bodyguards in Altamont, and that it was sort of the beginning of the end of the flower power, and drugs were a very big part of that culture. And drugs, I've done every drug. I've tried them all, and I don't do drugs anymore because I did that. It was in my youth, and I've experienced it. Now to do drugs, it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm an older man, and why do I need to do drugs? I've already done that. I've been there, done that. I don't need to have that high anymore. But I understand all the different drugs, and I understand what they do to you. And sometimes when you can go on a real bad trip and there's bad energy, and you pick up that bad energy, nothing articulated that to me more than what happened at Altamont. You're seeing these Hells Angels on the side of the road, like grinding their teeth and it's like they're an acid, and they're just like this. And all of a sudden, what happens is the energy, because when you're on drugs, you can feel that energy. When you're sober and or drunk or whatever, you can't feel the energy. But when you're on hallucinogenics, you can feel energy. And when there's energy shift and you're in tune with that energy, you join that energy and it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And so there's all this negative energy that built into a really horrible scenario where somebody died. And so I just thought it was really, really dark. And so I as soon as they said Hells Angels, that was the first thing that popped up for me. And so I imagined how cool it would be to do an outline cutout of the tongue with a scene of Jagger singing. And the way I created it is that you see the Hells Angels wading into the crowd as he's singing. And I feel like I nailed it. I love that piece. I actually grouted it in diamond dust, which I'm the first artist to figure it out. And I've got a formula where I put diamond dust. So when you light that, it just sparkles, Really? Yeah, I love that. I actually sometimes hate talking about the pieces that I've sold because I want them back. I mean, that's the tough thing about an artist is that you've got to feel really great when you sell your pieces, but at the same time down the road you kind of regret it because if I could keep certain pieces, that would be a piece that I wish I still had in my collection.
There's a scene in that documentary, the Stones documentary, Give Me Shelter, where they're on stage and all this mayhem's happening and stuff, and all of a sudden this stray dog just walks across the stage.
Yeah. It's just a sign of the times.
Then okay, this is out of hand, right? Basically.
Yeah.
Who do you look up to in the art world, basically?
I look up to a lot of different artists in the art world, but if you were to tell me who are your favorite artists right now, I would say George Condo. I'm a massive fan of George Condo. I'm a massive fan of Cause. I think Cause and George Condo, I would love to own their work. I mean, they're way past my price page, but they both speak to kind of the difference of my two worlds, I mean, Condo's a painter who's very dark. Cause is very bubbly and cartoony, so it kind of speaks to the two different areas I like to play. So those would be my two. I wouldn't say I'm inspired by them because I try not to be inspired by artists because there's so many great ones. I'm inspired every day on Instagram. I follow new artists every day, and there's young guys coming up, and I'm just like, oh my god, that's amazing, and so they all inspire me. Every artist, like I follow thousands of artists on my Instagram, and I love seeing what they do, and they all inspire me. So I get inspiration from every single artist I see. They've all got something that I'm like, wow, that's really great, you know? And so, but I would say 2 artists that I think that are still living, that will become very, very important. They're already very important, but they will go down as our modern day Picasso and our modern day Basquiat would be Cause and George Condo.
Well, you did an Andy Warhol piece.
I did, yeah. I mean, Warhol changed the game too. I mean, he created pop art. The Warhol piece I did, that was again, that was when I was starting to work on doing portraits, and I started with my self-portrait and developed a whole new sort of portrait, and he was the second portrait I did. And I showed him down in Art Basel, and that was also bought by a collector that I'm a very good friend with, and that was one of my breakthrough pieces.
Can you tell us what your favorite thing about Vancouver is, and how do you describe Vancouver to people that can say New York or anywhere that you travel to?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what I tell people. When people ask me where I'm from and I say Vancouver, the first thing they say is, oh my God, I hear it's beautiful there. Without a doubt, wherever I am in the world, the first thing they say is we hear it's beautiful there. And it really is truly gorgeous. I mean, what other city is like on the ocean with a rainforest in the middle of it, surrounded by snow-peaked mountains? I mean, it's the most beautiful city in the world. And I traveled the world and I've lived all over places in the world. It is truly the most beautiful city in the world. My favorite thing to do when I'm here is to do trail runs in North Vancouver.
Oh, great.
You know, I go to North Vancouver and I run through the trails, and it's like, you know, you're running up like rocks that have been carved into steps and fallen, you know, logs that are steps, and you're going through these old growth forests, and it's like,
is it Lynn Canyon and that kind of stuff? Like Lynn?
I use all the different ones, but my favorite that I used to run every single morning, my knee's bad right now, but every morning I would wake up and I would do Quarry Rock. Okay. It's a perfect run because you could run it up and run it down. I could do it in like 35 minutes up and down, and I would try to beat my time every time, you know?
Well, Jason, it's an honor, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Thanks for your time.
Please enjoy the rest of your evening.
Great questions, and I appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right.
What's your story, Vancouver?